This card don't read so good. Wake up. This card in the set. What the hell is this? Best in show. Beam me up, Scotty! Alright, what is up, my friends? Welcome to the complete set review for Edge of Eternities, the new Magic the Gathering set that I'm actually pretty excited about. Now, when I first heard this set announced, Magic in Space, I initially was a little like, we're gonna do another freaking like, cowboy hat space helmet set, but no, this set is pure Magic. It is a whole new world, awesome world building, just a really cool, like, new innovative thing. If you know me, you know I love innovative things. I hate nostalgia bait. I hate, referential stuff, and I love creative things. I'm pretty pumped for this set. So this is the standard set, of course. This set review is going to cover all the cards in the set, looking at them for constructed and for limited. We're going to give out all the awards we usually give out, which is our best in show, our sleeper card, our trap card, and our Bombin Common for each color. We'll be going over all the colors and sections. It'll all go up on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. A lot of work goes into this show, and your support makes that possible. So please take the half second and like and leave a comment in every section of the video. It really, really helps a ton. Thank you so much. Check out the sponsors. They're all great too. And don't forget, 10 New Brews is going to be this coming Wednesday. That's right, 10 New Brews this coming Wednesday, 2 p.m. Going to be a lot of fun on early access. We also have the Edge of Eternities season premiere of Bronze Mythic the following Tuesday on the actual set release. So, a bunch of new content here and a bunch of new stuff happening for the set. But let's rock and roll here. Edge of Eternities White, starting right now. Let's go with our first card. And our first card is all Fates Stalker. 4 mana for a uncommon 2/3. Also important to note, I'll be going over all the mechanics as we hit them. So once I hit them in the set review, I'll explain what they are and give them a light refresher as we go on. So all Fates Stalker is a 2/3 for 4. Whenever this creature enters, exile up to one target non-assassin creature until it leaves the battlefield. So your typical like Banisher Priest, temporary removal spell on a creature. However, it has Warp. Warp speed, Mr. Scott. The Warp ability is a new ability that allows you to cast a card from your hand for its warp cost, and then you exile the creature at the beginning of the next end step, and then it warps away into like kind of an adventure zone where you can cast it from exile. So it's kind of a mixture between like Evoke and Adventure, where you pay the cost, it comes into play and just sits there, and then at the end of turn, it warps away into exile. You can play it for its full cost. So very adventure-like. And this means that these almost all have ETB abilities or some sort of static ability where they kind of act like an enchantment because they're just sitting there. But while they're warped in play, they can tap to crew things. More on that in a bit. If they somehow get haste, they can attack with haste. They're in play. They can be killed by removal spells. So pretty interesting new mechanic. Kind of a cool design space here. And important to note that these are kind of like adventure cards where if you can use both sides of it, you're getting card advantage, right? So you get to warp it, do whatever you get off the warp ability, and then cast it again for full cost later. So this here is kind of interesting. It's kind of different on the front side and the back side. Most warp cards are kind of just giving you more of the same. This one plays very differently as a temporary effect than a permanent effect. So normally when you hard cast this, you're going to exile their creature. It's going to be a removal spell and so on and so forth. But on the warp cost, you're more likely to blink your own things and use it kind of as a blink effect, getting positive value, whatever else it might be. You can also warp and remove a blocker, which is kind of cool too. But yeah, so it's a pretty flexible card. It is a little clunky. 4 mana for a 2/3, probably not constructed playable, but good limited card. A lot of value here. Being able to kind of blink stuff or be a removal spell. So cool limited card. It counts as casting a spell on both sides, which matters more a little bit later, as we'll see. But yeah, this is a good limited card. I don't think this card is good enough for constructed. 4 mana Banisher Priest or 2 mana Sorcerer Speed Blink both seem kind of meh. But yeah, this card's cool, good limited card, and really interesting first look at the warp mechanic. Next up, we have a Steelli Reclaimer, and another warp card here. 5 mana for a 5/4 Angel Warrior with flying. It's a rare. Whenever it enters, return target non-creature, non-land permanent card, mana value X or less, from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast this creature. So, same idea here. This one you can warp in for 3. This one's kind of a more of the same thing, where you warp it in for 3, you'll temporarily have a 5/4 in play. You can bring back a card that costs 3 or less, a non-creature, important, and then it goes into the Adventure Zone, and you can play it again for full cost later. So this is more of what we see in the Warp cards, where it's kind of like the same on both sides. It is non-creature, so no reanimate shenanigans, but this card's pretty cool for returning, various artifacts, Simulacrum Synthesizer, or stuff like that. It's a kind of a powerful effect, and in theory, if you were to return some sort of thing that would blink it, so you could say there was an artifact, whatever, when this ETB's blink a thing, you could blink the Reclaimer and get back a different thing, which is kind of cool. There's definitely, there's ways to abuse this warp mechanic by putting it into play and then blinking it itself, which is kind of cool. So this card's pretty sweet. It's definitely a pretty good limited bomb. Just a big idiot flyer that can return things. It asks a lot of you in deck building, wanting to return non-creature things that are have to go to the graveyard. But it's a cool card. It's a fun card. Probably not good enough for constructed, unless it's like a pretty specific role it's going to play. I think the power level's, okay. But cool card, fun card, cool with the warp mechanic. And again, we'll get to warp a little more later, but what it can do. So next up, we have auxiliary boosters. Fire up the boosters. 5 mana for a artifact equipment. When it enters, make a 2/2 robot token and put the equipment on it. And it gives +1/+2 and flying. So base rate here for limited, this is a 3/4 flyer for 5. That is 2 pieces of cardboard and an artifact. 2 artifacts, actually. So for any sort of artifact ETB synergy, yada, yada, yada. I think this card's actually a pretty good common and limited. The 3/4 flyer for 5 is not great, but as we saw from Dragoon's Lance in the last set in Final Fantasy, having a random equipment laying around that can give a flying and a buff in a game of limited, if it's stalling out, is a huge thing. You just randomly give everything flying, attack for 5, give everything flying, attack for 5. So I think this card's pretty good. I think that it's not going to be a super high pick in limited because you can't play a ton of these, but this card's got a lot going on. It's 2 artifacts for artifact synergies. It's got good late game value. If you can blink this, whatever, that's cool too. So yeah, cool stuff. The fact that it costs 5 means it's not going to be a super high pick, but I think this is a pretty valuable limited card, which is nice. Banishing Light. Banishing Light returns. I mean, you know what Banishing Light is. This is not a new card. So this is a reprint of a reprint of a reprint. Good rule spell. It's already in standard. It's not that big of a deal there. Will be a high pick and limited. It's a good rule spell. Not too much more, though. Just, good rule spell. Is what it is. Limited banger. High pick. Cool new art. Beyond the Quiet. The flavor text of this card is horrifying. 5 mana sweeper. Exile all creatures and spacecraft. So not quite Sunfall. The exile part is important. I think if people get wrapped up in the exile part of Sunfall being very powerful, it is, don't get me wrong. What makes Sunfall good is it leaves behind a 5/5. That's why Sunfall is so good, So exiling is important. This is competing with Ultima and Constructed. Ultima has a somewhat similar effect. This destroys spacecraft, that destroys artifacts, so on and so forth. But the flavor text here is, as the Super Void's photon collar washed over them, time stopped, and their souls would experience the grandeur of their demise for eternity. That's horrifying. Just you're just going to be stretched out in a black hole for eternity or whatever. It's just horrifying. But yeah, this is you're the sweeper of a set. Most sets have a sweeper in it. I don't think this card is that much better than Ultima. But it's good. It has value. If you're playing artifacts and don't want to kill your own artifacts, say you're playing a synthesizer deck or whatever. But yeah, good sweeper. Nothing too crazy here. In limited, spacecraft don't seem to be a huge part of the limited format. In Final Fantasy, the issue with Ultima, which is basically this card, but it kills artifacts as well, was that most of the white decks were artifact focused, so you just kill all your own shit. So it didn't even feel like a white card. I think the card will have less of that problem in limited, but it's still, it's 5 mana sweeper, nothing crazy. Good pick in limited, but will underperform if you're aggressive. Bright Spear Zealot is next. 3 mana for a 2/4 common vigilance, which is a pretty good stat line for a draft common. And it gets +2/+0 as long as it has 2 or more spells this turn. So every color pair in limited always has a theme around it, right? So, in this set, I think it's blue and white. The theme is playing 2 or more spells in a turn. So this card's pretty good. Even without the 2 or more spells text, a 2/4 vigilance for 3 is a fine limited body. It blocks well, it attacks well, it can do both at the same time with vigilance. And then if you're ever casting 2 more spells in a turn, 4 is a lot to attack for. And there's a lot of like small stuff we'll see that helps you do this 2-spell a turn thing, but Warp is one of those too. Warp is a way to get 2 castings out of 1 spell, and there's a lot of synergy with Warp kind of baked into the set that's not immediately apparent. It's not just like, when you warp a thing, draw a card. A little more subtle, but it's also really, really good design. So, good draft common, pretty cool stuff. Cosmogand Zenith is next. This is the mythic version of this card. It's just also a 3-mana 2/4, but it's a mythic. So you cast second spell each turn. You get 2 1 soldier tokens, or put a +++ counter on each creature you control. Corey Steelcutter, is that you?
Pointless.
Are we in nostalgia range for Corey Steelcutter yet? This card's good. This is going to be an absolute limited bomb. I think it has 2 issues compared to a card like Corey Steelcutter, where Steelcutter costs 2, not 3, which is huge for being able to... You want to be able to play a card like this and immediately trigger it. So playing Steelcutter on turn 3 and then playing a 1-mana spell did that. This is more of a 4-drop, and that's a big difference between a 3-drop. You play it on turn 3 and they just kill it, kind of you'll get that immediate value. So I think this card is okay. I think it's going to be an underperformer in Constructed. I think it could still see play, but not the most exciting. Kind of in the Monastery Mentor space a little bit, where it could kind of be that kind of control-y role. It's also a creature where Corey Steelcutter is harder to kill as an artifact. But yeah, card is going to be a good, probably not good enough for Constructed, maybe okay, but will be an absolute slam dunk, windmill slam, bomb, and limited, and a pretty fun card in general. Dawnstrike Vanguard is next. 6 mana for a 4/5 lifelink human knight. This is an uncommon. Beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, put a +1 counter on each creature you control other than this creature. So this is your big time, top end limited card. And this, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures mechanic, is pretty prevalent in white. Because we'll see you'll be tapping things to crew stuff. A little on that later. But this feels like a pretty good top-end card for a draft deck. You know, a 4/5 lifelink body for first 6 it's not great, but it's a pretty good body. And then if you're able to pump up the team, over and over again, that's pretty great. These sort of scaling effects tend to be very good in Limited, because if the board stalls out, you can kind of keep scaling up and doing the thing. So, yeah, this is called stationing, if you will. It's the red-white mechanic. So we'll see more on that in a little bit. But yeah, good limited card. Pretty cool. Next up is Dock Worker Drone, 2 mana for a 1/1. It's a robot. ETBs with a 1/1 counter on it, and then when it dies, put its counters on a creature you control. I think this card is excellent. I was very close to giving this the Best in Show, Bombin Common award for white. It was a card I think is better, but this card seems phenomenal. So, +1/+1 counter theme is prevalent for Limited, and this has the kind of modular effect where you play it, and then it dies, and then it moves the counters over, but it's also a creature or it natively has a counter on it, where there are cards in the set that care about things having counters on them to do stuff. So this already solves that. It's a synergy enabler, and then also a payoff too, which is great. So for 2 mana as an artifact as well, this is like your absolute bread and butter limited card. I think this card's awesome. Really, really good draft card. Not good enough for Constructed, but a true workhorse draft card. Dual Sun Adepts. 2 mana for a 2/2 double strike. Man, they don't mess around with these double strike cards anymore. They used to cost double strike so carefully. Now they're just like, yeah, whatever. 2/2 double strike for 3 with a big upside ability. 5 mana pump the whole team, and it's a double pump on this too. So this is a very powerful limited card. Constructed is not good enough, but for limited, this card hits pretty damn hard and pumps the whole team. It's a great card to wear counters as well. So this is a card that's good enough on face value, and then especially good alongside the synergies of +1/+1 counters and stuff like that too. So yeah, phenomenal uncommon, really powerful draft card. Dual Sun Technique. Moving on to a card that might see play Constructed. When I saw this card, I was sort of like, oh yeah, they banned Heartfire Hero, not Manifold Mouse. Because this card would have been preposterous with Heartfire Hero. 2 mana for an instant, it gives double strike. Usually par for the course. But if it has a +1/+1 counter on it, you draw a card.
More legendary creature cards than I've ever seen.
That is extremely powerful. 2 mana cantrip, double strike, draw a card. Really, really, really good. This is an absolute banger limited card, and a card that I think has play in Constructed if there is some sort of +1/+1 counter deck. Cantrip double strike is very, very nice. So Banger limited card, and then of course a possible card in constructed as well. Next up is Emergency Eject.
Get off my plane.
Then for an instant, destroy target non-land permanent. Its controller makes a lander token. What's a lander token? Well, it's basically a Wayfarer's Bauble.
Pointless nostalgia.
Artifact, 2-mana tap, sack a token, and rampant growth. Search for a basic land. So, kind of a cool new, riff on maps or clues, whatever else it might be. This is our newest artifact token, and it's pretty good. It's similar to any other clue or map kind of thing, where making the artifact matters a lot more than it might seem. Whether you're going to sacrifice it or rectangle theory, etc., etc. And the lander tokens, there is some landfall stuff in the set, and of course ramping and fixing and limited. These sort of effects tend to be kind of iffy. At 2 mana, like Get Lost, they are playable but iffy. At 3 mana, we are like whoosh, off a cliff as far as efficiency goes. So I think this card is pretty bad at constructed. There's also a lot of decks constructed you don't want to give a token to, whether they're going to use it for value or just ramp. So I think this is mostly a pretty mediocre limited card. Stroke of Midnight kind of thing where it's just not, you just don't want to give your opponent resources most of the time. But it is a, break in case of emergency limited card if you absolutely are desperate for removal. But overall, I think this card is pretty sketchy and will play kind of eh. Next up is Exalted Sunborn Mythic, 5-mana 4/5 flying lifelink angel. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many are made instead, and this has warp for 2. So this is the idea of his warp thing, right? Where you could like warp this in for 2 mana and then play a token maker and then play the angel later as an actual creature. So I think this card is mostly, a great limited card. Comparing this card to Elspeth, the 5-mana Planeswalker that has the same doubling thing that also does a bunch of other things, makes this card look pretty bad. And then adding 2 kicker to all your token makers also seems kind of eh. So feels more like a big time commander card, just kind of like a do your thing commander. You want more doubling effects, yada, yada, yada. It's a very powerful limited card because a 4/5 flying lifelink for 5 is totally reasonable. And there might be spots where you can warp it in and get a little extra value on your tokens. But yeah, this is a commander card. Open it in foil, put it in your binder and sell it or whatever, because that's what you're going to do with it. But yeah, cool card, cool art. A lot of great art in the set, like really, really cool art. Next up is Exo Suit Savior, the mana 4/8 2/2 flyer. When ETBs return up to 1 target permanent you control to its owner's hand. And it does not. Is there a flash on there? Is flash? Don't see flash on there. This card's pretty stinky.
Still a piece of garbage.
You can, use it to reuse an ETB effect or whatever, but for the most part, the Windrake, the 2/2 flyer for 3, is well below the bar these days in limited. And, if you're bouncing things for value, you can get a little bit out of this, but nothing inherently in this set, like, Job Select wants you to bounce stuff. So I think this is a filler draft common and not too much more. Sorry, Windrake. F's in chat for Windrake. Next up is Flight Deck Coordinator, the mana for a 3/3. End step, you control 2 or more tapped creatures and gain 2 life. So again, that 2 or more tapped kind of station commander effect. Again, more on why we're going to want to be able to do that a little bit later. But this one seems pretty good. 3/3 for 3 is a totally fine body. And one of the downsides of crewing stuff is that you're tapping yourself out of blockers. The fact that this gains life to kind of get that back is pretty cool. It's mostly like limited filler, not a very exciting card. But it's cool. I think this card's fine. Good, fine limited card. I think it will play a little better than it looks if you are doing the whole station thing. Focus Fire. This card.
Bingo!
It's a pretty good draft card. 1 mana for an instant. X damage target attacking blood blocking creature. Where X is 2 plus the number of creatures and or spacecraft you control. That's cheap. Now the one issue with this card is that typically the deal damage to an attacker or blocker type of card is better in defensive decks than offensive decks, because when you kill an attacker, it's lightning bolt. But when you kill a blocker, it has to actually get blocked first. So you don't get to deal your damage, which is kind of rough. But at 1 mana, this is pretty nice. And the thing is, the more controlling decks will usually have less creatures in play, making this a little less efficient. But this is quite good. This is a really good limited card. It's still, even if you're playing an aggressive deck and you have to kill a blocker after they block, for 1 mana, it's pretty freaking awesome. So I think this is a very, very, very cool limited card. Watch your creature count. Watch spacecraft count. More on that in a bit, but good draft card. And then not in constructed because we've had a better version of this, which we'll see a little bit, but yeah. Halilia, Guided by Light.
It's a character in Final Fantasy, Mom.
Folks,
It's a video game.
we got our sleeper card, and this card is pretty interesting. 3 mana for a 3/3. It's a human soldier. Whenever it or another creature or artifact enters, gain 1 life. And then on your end step, draw a card if you've gained 3 or more life this turn. And it has warp for only 1 mana. So these 1 mana warp cards are really, really easy to just like to kind of slink in, noting that it'll also gain a life for itself. So that's 1 life right there. So say you play a 2/2 lifelink for 2 or whatever, and next turn you warp this in, attack for 2, gain 2, this gain 1 life, and step draw a card, and then you goes into your adventure zone. You can play it again. That's pretty damn powerful. Life gain's a thing where life gain by itself typically isn't great, but when you're able to tack on other things to the life gain, it ends up being really, really good. So that's pretty nice. So I think this is a very powerful effect on a reasonably cheap creature, even more reasonable with the warp cost here. So a lot of the time, this is just going to be 1 white, gain 1 life, draw a card, and that is awesome. That is really, really good. So I think this card's a sleeper. I think this card is quite good and can do a lot of cool stuff. And yeah, just a really, really cool card. Bonkers limited card. You just play some creatures and gain some life and draw whatever. Triggers on artifacts also, which is pretty cool. So if you're just playing an artifact deck, make some lander tokens or clue tokens and then gain some life, draw cards. So I think this card's great. Big fan. Yeah, that's my sleeper card. So there you go. That is the sleeper card for white is Halilia, Guided by Light. Next up is Hard Light Containment.
It's a trap. Arrest. You're going to jail.
We got our trap card. We're going back to back here. All right. Hard Light Containment is 1 mana enchantment aura. Enchant an artifact you control. When it enters, exile a target creature an opponent controls till this leaves the battlefield, and it gives the permanent ward 1. So this is kind of like your Chained to the Rocks, Sheltered by Ghosts, etc. effect, but it has some issues. Chained to the Rocks goes into a land. It's pretty hard to kill a land, This goes onto an artifact, and artifacts are going to be a big deal in this set. I imagine a Braid's going to see a lot more play, and you don't want your artifact to get blown up, in the middle of an important combat step, and then it also brings the creature back that you killed to surprise you. That's a big deal. So I don't think Ward 1 is good enough here to mitigate the downside. There are no artifact lands or anything like that. So whatever you're putting this on is going to be a reasonably important thing or a very vulnerable thing. Either it goes in like a simulacrum synthesizer, or it goes on a clue token, and those are both pretty bad places to be. So I think this card is going to be a good limited card, but for constructed, I think this card is really sketchy, very, very risky, and it asks a lot of you, doesn't pay you off that much, and is very, very risky. I think this is going to get people blown out a lot, but it is really cool art, so I like the art. But yeah, not very excited about this card. That's trap card for white is Hard Light Containment. Moving on to Honor. I love this card.
Yeah.
1 mana sorcery. Put a +++ encounter on target creature, and then draw a card. So this is like your absolute awesome nuts and bolts limited card that plays well in multiple archetypes and acts on a really, really good rate. 1 mana for a counter draw card is just a good rate, period. That's just pretty good, honestly. That is nice. And this card, it plays awesome in the double spell deck because it's a cantrip, so it's very, very easy to cast 2 spells in a turn. It plays well in the ++ counter deck, where I could add counters to things, get that thing going, and then it's just a good card in general. So I think this card's awesome. Absolute banger limited card. Good on rate and even better with synergy. I think this card's got a chance in constructed too. I think that 1 mana cantrip, counter draw card is pretty sweet. And yeah, this card's awesome. I adore this card. I love cheap cantrips. Really, really good. You do need to be aware of constructed. There is some risk to this where if you go to target your creature and they kill it response, you don't draw a card. It's kind of a disaster. So you need to be aware of that. But this card's gas. Love it. Really, really cool card. One of my favorite cards in white, honestly. Awesome. Really great design. And also, it's like, how has this card not been printed before? Like with this name and this text, it's like really cool effect too. So this is the artwork from a Coldplay concert. Next up is Honored Knight Captain. 2 mana for a 1/1. When this enters, make a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. And it is 6 mana to sacrifice this. Search library for an equipment card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle. So there's no Batterskull in this set, unfortunately. But this is pretty good, right? Just raise the alarm on the front side. A little bit of upside for a lot of mana. Not an amazing card, you know. The raise the alarm stuff is there's better versions of this effect in Constructed. But for limited, this is a cool card. 2/1s, some synergy stuff. Just a fine draft card. Next up is Night Luminary. And folks, we got a Bombin Common. All right. This card is awesome. 4 mana for a 3/2. When it enters, make a 1/1 token. So you have a 3/2 and a 1/1 for 4, which is usually pretty good. But it's also got warp. So you can warp this, ETB, make a 1/1. You can use it to tap stuff, maybe, or trigger abilities, and then play it as an adventure as well. So you have a 2-drop and a 4-drop all in one spot. This is a common that gives you a curve. It gives you value, gives you bodies. This card's awesome. I am a monster fan of this card. I think this card is, it's a Bombin Common. I gave it an award for a reason, So really, really great draft card. Constructed, not good enough. The backside of for 4 mana is not really enough. But this is a great, great draft card. I think this is a huge synergy card. Really, really awesome. It might not be as good as Banishing Light, but I think it's important with my Bombin Common things to choose the cards that are going to define the format more than just be a generic removal spell. But I think this card's great, and it could definitely just be better than Bombin Common. So better than Banishing Light. So Bombin Common for white is Night Luminary. Next up is Lightstall Inquisitor. This is a pretty ridiculous 1-drop, right? We've come a long way from Savannah Lions. 1 mana for a 2/1 with Vigilance. It's an angel and a wizard. Both those types are relevant. There is some angel stuff in Foundations. Giada and the 1/3 angel, whatever it's called, Valkyrie something. So those 2 types matter. And then it says, whenever this creature enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand and may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Each spell cast this way costs 1 more to cast. Each land played this way enters tapped. So, kind of reminds me of Iceman from Marvel Snap. Any Marvel Snap players out there? Anyone?
Keep the change,
No?
you filthy animal.
Where it's a cheap creature that is super reasonable. Like 2/1 Vigilance Angel Wizard for 1 is like totally fine. And it stunts their development in some way. They get to choose. But this card is still super nice. So it slows a land down. It slows a spell down. I think this card's awesome. I think this card's really, really good. It's kind of interesting seeing, what a modern day Savannah Lion looks like. Because, Savannah Lions is currently legal in Standard, right? In case you didn't know that. But this card's so good. Yeah. And then really, really good to bounce a cast over and over again. Good if the synergy works as well. I think this card is good at face value and then great under synergy. Really, really good stuff. Gonna be a really fun card. I love this sort of white disruption that's not just a blanket Thalia effect or whatever, where it's a little more than that, which is great. So really, really cool card. Good in limited too. A little worse in limited, I think. It's not as the efficiency doesn't matter as much in limited, but really, really cool card. Lightstall Inquisitor, best in show for white in Edge of Eternities. All right, we did it. It's time to get on the spacecraft. So, we've been talking about stationing and crewing stuff, right? This is a new card type called a spacecraft. This one's called Lumen Class Frigate. 2 mana for a spacecraft. What's a spacecraft? So, spacecrafts have the station ability. Station means you, very similar to crew, you tap a creature you control, but rather than having to tap a certain threshold of creatures, you add charge counters equal to the creature's power to the spacecraft. You can also only do this as a sorcery. And then as you add more charge counters, it's kind of like level up where you get the things on it. So at face value, this card does nothing. Some spacecrafts do things without being crewed. This one is just a 2 mana artifact that's in play. Once you've stationed at least 2 power into it, it becomes an anthem. All other creatures you control get +1/+1. That's really cool because that helps you station with your other creatures. So kind of helps the whole team out, you know? Then when you've stationed 12 power or more, it becomes a 3/5 flying lifelinker. So this is kind of like a glorious anthem that can also be a big threat later, which is kind of cool. Again, as you've seen, there's a lot of synergy in this set as far as like tapping your creatures, having creatures that are tapped for value and effects. That's going to matter a lot in limited. This is a rare, but you know, we'll see rares and stuff, but there's more spacecraft at a common or whatever. But this card's pretty cool. This is a pretty cool variant on Glorious Anthem. It only costs 2 mana. You know, if you just go turn 1 Lightstall Inquisitor, turn 2 Frigate, tap the Inquisitor, now you're already at an Anthem. So you lose a little bit of an attack, but then have the ability to pump things up. And then now you have an Anthem. And then as the game goes on, you can make a flying lifelinker, which is cool too. So, and yeah, this has vigilance too. I'm sorry, you can actually attack first as well, which is pretty sick. So, so yeah, this card's pretty cool. I think this card might be good enough for constructed. Usually anthems, you know, anthems aren't really as good as they used to be. Back in the day when you were playing like actual Savannah Lions, you needed to be kind of find a way to push them over the hump. These days, creatures are so good that like they don't really need an extra boost. So I think anthems aren't as good as they were these days. But yeah, this card's pretty cool. A bomb unlimited, and then a card that has a good shot at constructed. I think if there is some sort of like go wide and so on and so forth deck. So next up is Lux Knight Breacher. This is a 4-mana 2/2. Enters the battlefield plus counters on it for each other artifact and creature you control. So this is a pretty big top-end limited card where it would not be difficult to make this into like a 6/6 or a 7/7 in your average game of limited, as long as your deck is willing to do that. This is definitely a synergy card in limited. You can't just put this card in your deck, but if you are playing a deck with artifacts that goes wide, you know, a lot of these pieces, you know, these kind of like double cards that make 2 pieces of cardboard kind of thing, lander tokens and 1/1s and whatever else, this thing will be a 6/6 or a 7/7 pretty easily, and that's nice, you know? So cool limited card, not a particularly high pick because it's a synergy common. You don't want a ton of these, but yeah, good limited card. I think an important card. One of those like kind of format defining cards where white decks are going to be defined in essence by having 2 of these or not. You know, it's kind of a big deal. So cool limited card, like it a lot. Pinnacle Stark Age is next. Pinnacle Stark Age is our temporary lockdown replacement. White 1 artifact. When it enters, exile all artifacts and creatures with mana value 2 or less until this leaves the battlefield. So note, this is not temporary lockdown. Temporary lockdown hits all non-land permanents. This only hits artifacts and creatures. So enchantments are fine, you know, battles or whatever else, other effects. So a little less flexible in that regard. It's also an artifact. It's arguable what card type is more durable in Standard right now. For a long time, artifact was less durable. I think there's possibly more disenchants than there are, or demystifies than there are shatters right now. But still, cool card. Nice card to have access to for the white decks to control stuff. And then plays well at Simulacrum Synthesizer also. So, and then it also has a 8-mana ability to put each card exile with this in its owner's graveyard and make a 2/2 robot token for each card put in this way and sacrifice it. So this is kind of cool. It makes your Wrath kind of a late game win con. Very, very slow, but kind of cool thing for control decks. So kind of a cool card for constructed. We'll definitely see play. You know, probably not a ton of play. A little less than temporary lockdown, but cool tool to have access to. And then in limited, I mean, in limited you have a chance to maybe use the 8-mana effect, but it's just okay. You know, it's fine. Pulsar Squadron Ace is next. 2 mana for a 1/2 human pilot. When it enters, look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put a spacecraft from among them into your hand. Rest go to the bottom in a random order. If you didn't put a card in your hand this way, put a counter on this creature. I think this card's awesome for limited. So there aren't that many spacecraft. I think having 5 spacecraft in your draft deck seems like it would be a surprising number. So this card hitting it's not always going to hit. But having the buyout of being a 2/3 for 2 with a counter on it for counter synergy stuff is pretty awesome. So this is cool. I like that. So this is almost more of a 2/3 for 2 that has a counter on it than a spacecraft card, but it can do the spacecraft thing too. So good optionality here on a good draft common. Good 2-drops and limited are extremely important. For constructed, you know, I doubt there would be a deck playing on a spacecraft to utilize this card. But, you know, if there is some sort of crazy deck with that, sure. But yeah, great limited card. definitely one that that needs to be. You need to be aware of the backside of his card. The fail case is almost better than the front side. Radiant Strike. 4-mana instant. Destroy a tapped artifact or creature. Gain 3 life. This is a filler limited removal spell. I would like to not have this card in my deck if possible. 4 mana is a lot for this effect. Gain life is cool and all. It does draw a card if you have the legend pictured in play. But yeah, this is a pretty bad removal spell for limited. Not so exciting. It does need to kill a tapped artifact, sure, but it's still like a pretty mediocre card. I would not be thrilled to have this card in my draft deck. I would like to have other removal spells if possible. Rayblade Trooper, 2 mana for a 2/2. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever a non-token creature you control, the counter on it dies, make a soldier, and it's warped for 2. So this is kind of cool. 2 mana, add a counter or something, and then you have this like temporary enchantment where you can attack, and if they block and trade, get a token, and then play it again later. It can also target itself, just be a 3/3 with a counter on it, which is great too. So great limited card. Really good card for the counter decks in limited. This card's very nice. Great limited card. Constructed, probably not, but great limited card. Reroute Systems. This card is nice. 2 mana for an instant. Choose one. Target artifact or creature gains indestructible till end of turn, or it deals 2 damage to target tapped creature. We've seen a lot of these protection spells, right? And they're often okay, but like they're not that flexible. And you know, you get into a spot where you just like draw 2 of them, don't draw, they kill your creature before you can use it, whatever, yada yada yada. The fact that this has a buyout, it can be a shock, is pretty awesome, honestly, you know? So this is a really impressive trick. You know, we're seeing that they're trying to make tricks better and better so people play them more. This is a really good one. Being able to protect your own stuff and also have a playable removal spell is amazing. This card, both sides of this would not be playable by themselves, but I think the modality here is pretty sweet. So I think that the main draw is the protection aspect of it, but I could be surprised otherwise. So card's really cool. Really nice card. Pretty good limited card. Definitely a chance to see play constructed. Card's nice. Just a really good modal card. Next up is Rescue Skiff. This is another spaceship. 6 mana for a 5/6. When it enters, turn target creature or enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It has station 10 or more. It's a 5/6 flyer. This card seems a little iffy. It is pretty powerful if you have a good thing to return. 6 mana, you zombify, and then you can put some mana into it and crew it. It's important to note that like when you're tapping to station these things, you lose a blocker, but if you are able to make it into a creature, you gain the blocker back like immediately, which is kind of cool. So this is fine. This is like an okay top end limited card. Not too much more, but it's kind of cool. Scout for Survivors. 2 mana for a sorcery. Return up to 3 target creature cards mana value to a total amount of value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield and put a counter on each of them. This is the best of this effect I think we've ever seen. 3 mana to return 3 1-drops. That card's existed for a while. This buffs all of them and gives you the optionality to return just 1 3-drop or a 2-drop and a 1-drop. It's a pretty narrow card. You need to have a deck that would actually want this card. But if you do want a card like this is the best it has ever been. So there are some sort of like, sacrifice, black-white, Sephiroth decks that are playing a bunch of 1-drops in standard. This could be a way to recur those. I don't know. It's a powerful card. I don't know if it finds a home or not. It can return to Oculus, I guess, too. But yeah, pretty cool card. For limited, much worse, because it's harder to have that many 1-drops in your deck. You really want to return 2 things with this to make it valuable, because if you return all 3 things, you get 3 counters, that's much more value than just getting 1 thing with 1 counter, which is not very good. So this card is very powerful. It is somewhat narrow, but it's pretty cool to see this effect kind of push like this. Seam Rip. This card came very close to winning an award. 1 mana enchantment, Portable Hole. When it ETBs, exile an online permanent mana value 2 or less till it leaves the battlefield. Portable Hole is really powerful, sees a ton of play in a ton of formats. This is the enchantment version of it. In some cases, that's better. In some cases, that's worse, right? So Portable Hole sees play often in artifact decks in Modern that are playing Emery. In that case, Portable Hole is much better than Seam Rip. But maybe you're playing a Constellation deck, or maybe you have a some other way to utilize enchantments, making this card better. So this card is quite good. It is very cute that the new lockdown doesn't hit this, so you can play both. which is kind of cool, right? So that's pretty sweet. Yeah. Card's very good. This card doesn't see a ton of play. You know, might end up being the most playable card in white in the set in Constructed because it's just so flexible and powerful. But yeah, card's great. Great, awesome removal spell. Worse in Limited than Constructed because there are not as many 1s and 2s floating around. A card you might even board out sometimes in Limited. But banger Constructed card. We'll see play in all formats. It's a good one. The Seria. Legendary vehicle. 3 mana for a 5/5 vehicle, potentially. Spacecraft. When it enters, search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. So, 3 mana sorcery, tutor for a legend. Has station, 7 or more. It's a 5/5 flyer that gives other tapped legendary creatures you control indestructible. This is a kind of a finicky card. You know, in Limited, if you have a legendary rare to get, this is a bomb tutor, cool. But in Constructed, 3 mana tutor for a legend is not very good. And then 7 station to make a 5/5 is not very good either. So I think this card's pretty sketchy, honestly. It's cool, but pretty sketchy. And for Limited, I think this is like, you know, probably more of a, you know, I have a bomb, I want to go get it kind of thing. But yeah, it's cool. It's got cool art. Yeah, you know, it's cool. Squire's Lightblade. 1 mana for an artifact equipment. Flash. When it enters, auto-equip. That creature gets first strike, +1/+0, equip for 3. Wasn't there this exact same card in the last set that equipped for 1? Right? Isn't that true?
Still a piece of garbage.
That card was okay. It wasn't particularly great. And this card is significantly worse. So that card was red, this card was white. But yeah, I think this card is pretty bad. Equipping for 1 is pretty cool. Equipping for 3 is like kind of gross. So I think this card's pretty bad. I imagine this card, you don't want this card in your deck most of the time. But is what it is. Starfield Shepherd. More cool art. This is a 5 mana angel, 3/2 flyer, uncommon. When it enters, search the library for a basic plains or creature. Mana value 1 or less. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. And it's warp 2. Too small for Constructed, but a really cool limited card. You know, 2 mana to get it to land cycle or get a 1-drop. Noting this is not cycling. The warp is an adventure. So this is one of those card advantage adventure cards where you play the front side, get your value, put it out to the side, and then cast it again, which is pretty sweet. So this card's pretty cool. You know, the buy is a little small, but you're getting enough value where I'm pretty happy with this limited. And Constructivist could see some play in older formats where if you have ways to ephemerate or, you know, Philia, this is cheap enough and one mana value cards are important enough in older formats that's kind of sweet. So chat notes that you cannot warp and then cast like an adventure in the same turn, which I guess is relevant sometimes, but not that important. But yeah, I think this is a fringe player possibly in like much older formats where there are very cheap blink effects and great 1 mana cards. But yeah, this card's cool. Good limited card. One of those interesting cards where it seems good in limited, kind of not so great in standard, and then actually pretty good in modern and legacy, which is fun. So cool card, cool art. Starfield Shepherd. Starfighter Pilot is next. 2 mana for a 2/2. Becomes tapped. Surveil 1. Just a good draft card. Good nuts and bolts draft card. You can tap it to crew stuff or just act with it. Surveilling is pretty great also. Good nuts and bolts draft card. Starport Security. 1/1 for 1 robot soldier. 4 mana tap this, tap a creature. Costs 2 less to activate if you control a creature with a counter on it. So in the counters deck, this card seems okay. A tapper for a 1/1 for 1 tapper, it taps for 2 is pretty good. Not great, but pretty good and limited. But you must have a ton of counters or this card's pretty bad. So I think this card is filler limited card. Sunstar Chaplain. 2 mana for a 3/2 human cleric. If you see it, folks, listen to me, all right? If you see a 2 mana rare or uncommon 3/2, that means that they want you to play it in Constructed. All right? That is just a baseline. That's what Wizards wants you to do. They think this card's pretty cool. Be aware. 2 mana 3/2, human cleric. End step. You control 2 or more tap creatures, put a counter on a creature you control, and you can pay 2, remove a counter, and then tap target artifact or creature. Pretty cool card. Pretty cool in like Invoke and like kind of go wide decks. Being able to pump things up is nice. And then also being able to turn those counters into blocker removal is pretty cool too. And the rate is, fine. 3-2 for 2 is pretty reasonable. So, cool card. Maybe an outside shot kind of constructed card. And then a great limited card. Sunstar Expansionist, 2 mana for a 2-3. When it enters, if a component controls more lands than you, make a lander token. And then as landfall, +1/+0. Great limited card. 2-3 for 2. Good body. Attacks for 3 most of the time. And then will catch you up on lands if you are behind. Constructed, not really good enough. You really just don't want to be behind on lands if possible. But yeah, definitely a weird looking chocobo.
I like that bird though.
That is the chocobo ability. So
Birdie.
pretty funny. But yeah, this is a good limited card. Not too much more. Sunstar Lightsmith, 4 mana for a 3-3. Cast second spell, put a counter and draw a card. Banger limited card. Mythic uncommon level limited card. Constructed, no, but banger limited card. Huge for that archetype. Wedge Light Rammer. 4 mana for a 3-4 spacecraft. When it enters, make a 2-2. Has station. And the station is 9+ for a flying first strike. I actually like this one a lot. In limited, having your spacecraft, it's really important for your spacecraft to do something. So when you're initially playing a spacecraft, it is a blank piece of cardboard. It just sits there and rots, and without someone to fly it. So the fact this makes a 2-2 is pretty sweet, and that helps crew it and puts a body in play. And if you crew this thing, it's pretty big. I think this card's still pretty meh, but the fact that this makes a token is pretty cool. But yeah, and again, it's also a synergy thing for all of your tappy stuff. And it's important to note you can also keep crewing once the station cost is reached. If it has 10 counters on it, you can still keep adding counters to it and tapping your stuff if you'd like to. Weft-Blade Enhancer, 6 mana for a 3-4 common. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each up to 2 target creatures, and has warp for 3. I mean, in these days in limited, you'd really prefer your 6-drop to be a rare or an uncommon. But as far as top-end limited cards go, this card's kind of okay, The warp cost gives you 2 counters for 3, which is pretty good. And then top-end wise, it can pump itself, be a 4-5, and pump a different thing. This is not a card you should ever take highly in a draft, but if you're desperate for a 6-drop at some top end and you're in your counters deck, this seems okay. Reasonable card. Which you don't often say about common 6-drops. And we have Zealous Display. 2 mana for an instant. Creatures you control get +2/+0 end of turn. If it's not your turn, untap those creatures. That's kind of cool. So you can crew all your stuff and say go and then untap the block. This sort of +2/+0 effect is good and limited in go wide decks. There's a lot of Woolen tokens flying around. So this is a pretty finicky card. It's certainly not a card that most decks will want or you should ever take highly. But there will be draft decks that want this card, and it'll do a pretty good job. Also a card to watch out for. Don't die to this card at the pre-release, folks. If you're at 12 and they attack you with 5/1/1s, think about this card. Make some blocks. All right, Jim's here to tell you. I just don't want you to die. All right, just be careful. So to recap for white. Our best in show is Light Stall Inquisitor. Our sleeper card is Halaya, Guided by Light. Our trap card is Hard Light Containment. And our Bombin Common is Night Luminary. So that's white. Blue's coming up. Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you check out Bronze Mythic and 10 New Brews coming up later in July. And of course, we have 10 New Brews happening on Wednesday, the 23rd. All right. Like, comment, subscribe, folks. I'll see you in blue. Street folks go nowhere. Let's do this.